Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today's upload is, well, it's something. Before we get into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, if you'd really like to help this channel to continue to grow and go, just simply subscribe and click the like button. It's fast and it's free. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? This upload will be uploaded on the 22nd of April. On that day, I am going up to scout around again where Thomas Messick went missing. After careful consideration and looking at comments, I decided that I am going to, well, first, I'm going to pan around slowly more so you guys can really see what I'm seeing, not so quick. Also, I'm going to be prepared with a little more things to talk about. I know there was something out there while I was out there that day. And yes, I will be bringing protection. With that video will be up on the 23rd. I hope you guys do enjoy it. I'm really enjoying going out on location. I got a couple other places that I want to look at. But like I said, this case is just really close to my heart. Now, with that, I'm assuming that prior to my channel, a lot of you heard New York, and some of you may have been up my way. Some of you may not have. But a lot of people, when they hear New York, they think of the city. The grime, the dirt, the rats, the cockroaches, the crime, the shopping, the this, the that, the Statue of Liberty, the Empire Straits Back, the Empire State Building. I'm going to leave that in right there. And normally I'd delete that, but so it's not though. It's a beautiful state, rich with farmland and forests. We have, if not the largest, one of the largest state parks in America, 600 million square acres. It's absolutely ginormous. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful area. And I am proud to call that area my home. Now, with that, there are some reasons why I don't think it is the safest place to enjoy the woods, enjoy nature. I don't think it's the safest place to go while you're alone and unarmed or unprotected. Possibly without people even with you, you know. You should always bring someone with you. I can't because I don't have friends. I just became a single dad and now I just raise my kids. I didn't just become one, but, well, now I just do that. So up north where I live, we have a lot of mystery and a lot of encounters. And one we all know, the disappearance of Tom Mezek. The second is a military installation built in the 40s to raise or create super soldiers from children in the Adirondacks. I'm going to be going there this summer as well. I'm going to find that place. And a lot of encounters, my own included. Now, I've said that I've wanted to go there and film, but I went through it the other day. I drove through the area the other day, and I was like, I cannot get out of my vehicle and film here because these people that are living in these homes are going to think I am like stalking their home and setting up for a robbery if I go out with my camera. So I want to talk about that. I want to show you where it occurred. But the upstate region is very beautiful, but very dangerous. And I'm going to give you a few stories, experiences, why it is dangerous, and why you should be careful when you venture into the Adirondacks. It was July of 1975. I was 16, living in a small town just west of Rochester, New York. I'd seen a flyer promoting from a Catholic youth organization in Rochester, promoting a 5-day hiking trip in the high peaks region of the Adirondacks. My parents agreed that I could go. There were about 10 hikers and 3 counselors. The first 4 days and nights were fun but relatively uneventful. Hours of trails, rarely meeting anyone else on the trails. Living on freeze-dried food, jerky, pemmican, and fruit leather. Sleeping in trailside lean-tos or setting up tents around the fire. The last day was spent on an ascent to Mount Marcy. We spent the last night at the base of the mountain. Our tents were set up in a semicircle around a fire. We sat around that fire, singing the obligatory songs, telling stories, joking, laughing. We were all in good spirits. One by one, everyone retired to their tents. My tent mate went as well, leaving me alone by the fire. As usual, I was the last one left by the fire. I've always loved the night, especially in the woods. So many people don't realize how alive the woods are at night. The animals scurrying through the leaf litter on the forest floor, the occasional call of a night bird, roosting birds changing positions. On this night there was all of that, and off in the distance there was one of my favorite nature sounds, the haunting call of the loon. I sat there looking into the fire for quite some time, feeling happy that I had a wonderful time, but also slightly sad that it was ending tomorrow. Presently, I noticed how quiet it had become. All the sounds of nature had ceased, even the cry of the loon from the distant pond. The only sound was the crackling of the fire. I looked to my right, and I scanned the semicircle of tents. As I was doing this, I sensed movement out of the corner of my left eye. Turning my head, I saw, about 20 feet away, peering out from behind the trunks of 2 huge trees, what appeared to be the profile of a very large wolf's head, about 6 feet off the ground. Pointed muzzle, large upright ears, its right eye reflecting the light from the fire. For a brief moment, I was too startled and amazed to be afraid. It's incredible how quickly the human mind can work, and how many things you can try to process at once. I remember thinking, too big for a coyote. There are no wolves left in the area. If there are, they don't climb trees, and they are not 6 feet tall. As I said, the moment of amazement was very brief. It was replaced by a fear so intense that I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. The type of fear that feels almost electric and that makes certain parts of the male anatomy shrink and want to crawl back inside of you. Yet, even with this fear, my mind was still going 1,000,000 miles per second trying to let this sink in. I could see its right shoulder and what would be its deltoid muscle on a human, and it looked huge. As did its bicep. Its elbow was hidden by the trunk of the tree. I could see its forearm. It was held out horizontally. It looked somewhat slender, and its hand, not paw but hand, with long fingers ending in claws, hung down at a 90-degree angle. As odd as this was, what was even odder still was that there was what seemed to be a very primitive, roughly made, woven basket hanging from its wrist. It turned its head in my direction and tilted its head and looked at me from under its brow, directly into my eyes. There was no bluish reflection, as you'd get from a coyote when their eyes are illuminated at night, nor did they glow red as my huskies used to. They were a shiny black, like obsidian, reflecting the light from the fire. As our eyes met, I was hit with an immediate sense that it did not want me watching it, and also a deep feeling that it was disdainful of me and humans in general, and that if it wanted to, it could take me and I'd disappear into the night forever. I knew I had to get out of its sight as fast as possible. Since the first day of the trip, it had been drilled into our heads that the last person to leave the fire had to douse it. For this purpose, we had 2 buckets that we filled every evening, one with water and one with dirt. As I was the last one to go to bed, the buckets were next to me. All I wanted to do was dive inside of my tent. I didn't want to scream or yell. I sincerely doubt I would have been able to, or douse the fire. I just wanted to get to where it could not see me, and more importantly, I could not see it. Yet, the rational part of my brain told me that I didn't want to be responsible for burning down a large chunk of the Adirondack Park. I grabbed the bucket of water with my right hand and I launched backward from my cross-legged position. I threw the entire bucket onto the fire. The hissing sound and the plume of steam are still very clear to me this day. The tent was no more than 10 feet directly behind me as I scrambled inside. I yanked the zipper down and I got as deep into my sleeping bag as I could and assumed the fetal position. That's all I remember until morning. I was in my sleeping bag, head, shoulders, arms outside of it. I heard birds singing their morning song, and the tent was slightly illuminated by a gray dawn. As I went to sit up, I realized that the tent flap was unzipped and the lower half of my body was out of the tent. As I arose, I heard muted voices coming from a few tents, but no one else had come out yet. I walked a bit away to find a tree to pee behind, and I returned. One of the counselors had gotten up to prepare breakfast and asked me if I had slept well. I hesitated, and I told him I had. My tent mate came out, and I asked him if he had heard anything during the night, and he said no. By that afternoon, we were on a bus and on our way home. I never told any of the group what had happened. I never told anyone for decades. I pondered this event for years, analyzing it. I was thinking werewolf, but the only concept I had was the Hollywood version or the medieval accounts of werewolves, such as Peter Stubb. The accounts of them had them assuming the forms of wolves, not something half human, half wolf. Hollywood versions of the werewolves back then were basically just hairy guys with fangs until movies like The Howling came out with creatures similar to what I had seen, but only similar. I could not, and still cannot, wrap my head around people physically transforming into wolves as the years passed. While I still thought about it occasionally, I was busy working my ass off and distracted by life in general. Till I heard about Linda Godfrey and the Beast of Bray Road. Bingo! But I still never told anyone about my encounter. Years ago, while watching TV with my wife, I came across the show Monster Quest. the episode about the American werewolf, I was riveted. So much so that my wife tapped me on the shoulder and said, "For the third time, do you want some ice cream?" My response was to turn to her and say, "That's what I saw." I then told her of my encounter. I'm pretty sure she believes it was just my imagination back then, but she patted my shoulder and said something about it. I believe I saw it then. I believe I saw it. I've read dozens, if not hundreds, of encounters online and in books since. I found your channel a while back when I Googled Dogman Encounters Adirondacks. I emailed you again with the account of a two-dimensional silhouette creature that seemed dog-like, yet almost hyena-like. That was in Newburgh, New York in the mid-'80s. Thank you. P. Funny thing, when I first narrated this, and just now, I instantly thought of a group of feral humans that lived in New York that were expert basket makers. And these feral humans were actually hunted like animals back in the, I think late 1800s to 1900s. I think maybe up until the 50s, there was issues with them out in the wilderness. But they were expert basket makers. And I'm just thinking maybe there's some sort of connection. Very strange, but maybe some sort of connection. And that's just another one of those weird things that, New York has. You don't think feral people in New York State. You think, and I'm not insulting anybody, so please don't think I am, because I have met some of the greatest people from all over this country. But, like when you hear feral humans, you think like West Virginia, the Appalachians, the Ozarks, the Great Smokies. You just think of mountainous, desolate, poor communities surrounded by woods, and out there are these feral human beings that are very, very aggressive and nasty. But these people weren't really. I mean, they were just forgotten about, mistreated, definitely. But that was before things changed in the future. But anyway, I'm wondering if there is a connection there. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. This next experience is in the Adirondacks as well. Deep in the Adirondacks, almost up to the Canadian border by Hogansburg or the Oxasachi Reservation, where I have friends and family that live up there. A subscriber that I talked to, and he shared some pictures with me, which I will share in this as well too. But I want you guys to really realize how crazy and just strange it is up here in my area. This Dogman experience takes place in the town of Russell, New York, St. Lawrence County. A subscriber named Robert contacted me to tell me his experience, and here it is. I was 14 years old in 2000 and was rollerblading all day with my buddy. Now, as night is approaching, we go to his house, and his father, not wanting any company for the night, sends me home. Well, I don't want to go home, so I rollerblade to another buddy's house. Long story short, his parents aren't in the mood for company either. So I leave and start rollerblading back home now. So I stop back at the first friend's and borrow his 10-speed bike, and with rollerblades on, start to pedal home on Cracker Box Road, passing a field area and coming to the Pines. I hear something running aside of me. I stop and I hear a snap like a large branch got hit. As it stopped, this happened a couple more times. Before I finally get home, now throughout the years growing up, an old hermit lives off of Cracker Box Road in the woods in a kind of run-down hunting camp, and always said he heard this eerie high-pitched screams. Also, coyotes used to howl growing up. You don't hear them anymore at all. Something drove them out or killed them. Now, about 6 or 7 years ago, off of, yes, you guessed it, Cracker Box Road, is a place called Silver Hill State Forest. It's a small pasture owned by the head of corrections, and he's got 2 horses that run there. He came to me because I do a little side work, and he told me about his 2 horses. They were attacked from the hind quarter, tore up by something with claws 3 times the size of human hands. The DEC came in and did some investigations and determined it was not a cougar and possibly a black bear. Real quick, black bears cannot outrun a horse, and claws are meant for digging, not ripping and shredding flesh. This is the final part of my experience. There is a lake 8 miles away called Star Lake. Now, the gentleman who told me this story is the salt of the earth, God-fearing. He was fishing and he kept hearing rocks getting tossed into the water. Then all of a sudden, he hears this large splash 30 feet down and sees 8-foot black hairy humanoid creature. He gets in his car and drives home, leaving all of his fishing gear there. Oh yeah, a guy I also know has a picture of a dogman's back. He was asked, "What's that?" and responded, "What do you think?" There are my stories, encounters, believe them or not, but I'm a logger, and I always am looking out in the woods. And last is, this is the only way that I can show you where my encounter happened without having the police come, because I'm down in a neighborhood with a camera and people would think I'm stalking their home. So what you see excuse me, is the foothills of the Adirondacks. That dark line snaking through the screen is the Hudson River. This right here, this road, is Route 9. If you can see the mouse. Alright, going north, which would be this way, is where I grew up, in a small town called South Glens Falls, New York. And my buddies and I, and the 2 girls we were hanging out with, decide to drive out here. Now, my friend's girlfriend lived in this little cul-de-sac right here. We were pulling in right here. Okay, so that evening we pulled in. I'm not going to make car sounds, don't worry. So we pull in. These are all skeletonized houses at the time. Now, this is all woods. This is woods. There's random ponds out here. The Hudson River is right here. Just, there's an old prison up here. Ulysses S. Grant's cottage is right here. So we pull in and let me get situated again. Sorry. We pull in and around this area right here. We go around. And there's only literally probably that house, a house here. These houses are getting built. And we're like right here. Okay. These are all skeletonized houses. There's a street sign, or street light, excuse me, up here. That was like this amberish color. All right. So we're hanging out right here against this side of the woods. All of a sudden, we're hearing these screams, kind of howls, coming through the woods this way. We're blaring our music, and we're blaring Biohazard. And all of a sudden, these sounds get closer. Now, my friend's car is parked here. He's in the car. The girls and I and Martin are all hanging out. And what we see around this area here is these eyes. These houses weren't here, all right? So we are literally right here, okay? Parked right here. These houses aren't here. Whatever's coming out of these woods, and it is deep, guys. This just goes on and on to the Hudson River and further. So we see these eyes coming about right in here. We can kind of start making things out. I'm right here in the front, probably. The girls by now are in the car. The music's down. We can hear and see these creatures moving through the woods. We can literally see their eye shine. It's not eye shine, it's eyes glowing. Because I doubt any kind of eye would be able to reflect off that amber-colored street light. It was just this dull, buzzing, crappy street light. We're here. They're here now. And there's some up here. I believe what they were trying to do was keep us distracted. And I believe some wanted to come around here this way. And these up here wanted to come and fork over here and kind of catch us in this area. Because these, once again, I can't emphasize it enough. These houses are not here. This is just woods. There's houses that are getting built. Like, I think if we were here, that house, and maybe like that house were getting built. When I look up and I see the eyes right here, and the eyes are here as well, at varying heights, that's when my friend Martin pretty much said, get in the car. And I did. And what we did was my friend Gabe punched it, and we went down here and we went here. Okay? Now, as we were on Route 9 right here, so we were here. We drive down. As we are right here, turning this way to go home, is when this creature steps off onto the road. So it had to go this way. Well, we went that way. this thing came. It must have run so fast. But when it stepped out, and we're down here by now, I'm looking back. When it stepped out, it moved so awkwardly, it's hard to imagine that it ran so fast to catch us and cut us off. It really doesn't make sense. But I believe to this day that they were a hunting party, hunting us using tactical skills to box us in and take us out. The next day, my friend Martin and I in his truck come up. We rev up into here. Now we were here that night, okay? We end up driving up to like around here where we saw the eye shine. We get out. This is sand. This isn't great soil. It really is not. It's all pine and acidic-y. So we get out and start looking around, and the contractors or carpenters come down. One guy comes down, and he asks us what we're doing, because at that time people were stealing wood from our town. Was kind of having a population boom. There was a lot of these kind of little housing communities getting built, and I don't know who, but people were stealing wood, and apparently this guy thought we were doing it. So we're here and we're looking all along here on the dirt, sand on the side of the road, looking for tracks to see if they crossed over, this and that. And he says, what are you guys doing out here? We just tell him, hey, I'm looking for my friend's dog. He lost his dog. And he said, when'd you lose your dog? Now, when he came down, it was about in these houses right here, either of these two. So he walked down a little ways, not a long ways, but a little ways, 200 feet, so 700 feet down to us. And he proceeds to say, hey, when did your dog get lost? Was it lost last night? Because when we were packing up and situating everything for the night, we heard these howls, and it sounded like dogs were fighting. And we said, it's probably not his dog, this and that. And we left. Years later, I think about it, and I really think they were coming to stalk us tactically. These things must have been coming down from here in this area. Hudson River's here. I believe they were coming down for us, to get to us, to take anyone out who would be in this area. They were probably on a hunting party or whatever. I don't know. This is all fast moving road right here, Saratoga Road. It's like 55. A lot of tractor trailers use it. A lot of roadkill. So maybe they're coming to collect roadkill and hunt for deer that night. I don't know. But it is definitely just so weird to think about, because you've got woods over here, you've got fields, you've just got, this is not rural. I don't know what I want to say. It's very strange how these things travel. I cannot emphasize enough that you think you're safe at a certain location, but you're not. I mean, yes, we were in a rural area, but it wasn't that rural. these houses are still considered rural. You got farms, a lake. I mean, bodies of water. There's a lake right there. There's another lake, the Hudson River, another lake. It's absolutely terrifying to think these things came down that off this mountain up in here. You can see it. Somehow crossed here and pinned us down right here. Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. And the last part of this is going to come from a lake above Lake George, above where I live, called Lake Champlain. Now, if you are into cryptids like besides Bigfoot and Dogman, you would have heard of Champ, who is supposedly like a cousin or whatever of the Loch Ness Monster, a plesiosaur. I've heard some people say it's a giant turtle, or a sea snake or whatever, but obviously they don't live in this area because the legend is it's a plesiosaur. Lake Champlain is in two states, New York and Vermont. So it's almost where the Adirondacks meet the Green Mountains. And, this is another reason why you need to be careful while camping in the Adirondacks or visiting or whatever. Jeff, this is a true experience from when I was on Lake Champlain. I would go to Lake Champlain and stay on lake in these cabins with my friends every year when I was younger. We really enjoyed it. This was back in the mid-90s. Myself, my friend Tom, went to our normal place, the Sportsman Cabins, in Vergines, Vermont, as we always did. I can remember the place being packed with fishermen, as there was a bass tournament that week. Shortly after we arrived, my friend had to leave for a family emergency, so I was going to be alone for a few days at the cabin. There was a group of fishermen next to the cabin that were in the bass tournament. I kind of didn't want to hang around. I don't know why. That night I was alone. I decided to go down to my favorite fishing area. It was a tube that went into the backwater from the road. It was a very popular fishing area on the lake. When I drove by before parking, I noticed no one was there at night. Usually it was packed with fishermen. I was like, okay, I guess this will be the best spot tonight. I parked my truck about 100 yards down the road. I walked down and set up fishing poles. It was a great night. A nice breeze off of the lake, the lights from the bridge to New York reflecting on the water. I was enjoying everything. Behind where I was fishing was the backwater area from the tube from the lake that went into, and behind that was farmland. I was just enjoying this beautiful night. Nothing was biting, but such a beautiful night on the lake. I noticed that in the distance I heard a howling sound. It was pretty far away, so I wasn't worried. Not sure what it was, maybe coyotes or something. The lake had such a nice breeze. I could remember the lights from the distant bridge shimmering off the water. I noticed the howling noise was getting closer. I knew that behind me was backwater, so it would be impossible for anything to cross that. But the noise was alarming. I kept hearing this howling sound getting closer, and it sounded more like it was from something larger than a coyote. I've spent a lot of time in the woods, and I've heard coy dogs, coyotes, so I'm very familiar with them. I was at this point a little on edge, as the depth of the sound seemed to come from a larger, more threatening animal. You can imagine being all alone and hearing this howling sound steadily getting closer definitely was getting concerning. At this point, I'm looking behind me where the noise is coming from. No cars came down the road. That made everything a little more scarier. The howling was getting closer and closer. So close that it not only sounded menacing, but possibly life-threatening. I could remember it sounded like it was surrounding me. I thought, that's not possible. At this point, I was suddenly feeling like I had to leave or face what was coming. I reeled in the lines and ran as fast as I could to the truck, slammed everything into the back, and jumped in. This felt like a death run when you believe something is behind you and it will catch you. I start the truck and drive back to the cabins. As I'm about to pull in, I notice the fishermen next to the cabin are all out on the table staring at me. So I ended up turning around. I kept going and took the bridge to New York over to Port Henry. I parked at the first place that had a pull-off. It ironically was the Champ billboard of all the sightings in the lake. I stayed there for an hour and a half before I felt safe to return back to the cabin. I believe something was out there. Sometimes it's what you don't see that's the most scariest. I'm not sure what it was, but it was large, and I would not have wanted to see what it was. Thank you. Now, I have heard stories from many people. Port Henry leads down to Thai, and then into Thai you get Ticonderoga. For all you history buffs out there, the Revolutionary War was fought right in my backyard. So from Ticonderoga, we all call it Thai up here, you take 9 South, and that brings you to like Hague. Hague is where, ironically enough, Tom Mezek has a camp, or had a camp. There's a guy that reached out to me a while back who was walking down 9 South, or he was going south or going north, but either way it was 9. It's one road. And on the rock ledge above him, because on Route 9 it goes down toward the lake. It's a mountain. It's very beautiful. But above you is this rock wall, like a rock ledge. And he saw a very large bipedal creature. And thankfully enough, for his sake, he was by some houses, and he made it to where he needed to go very safely. But whatever that thing was, moving through those woods at a slant, at like a very fast running pace, was definitely not a human being. So, with that, the craziest, or the crazy, whatever, craziness of the Adirondacks, and why you should be careful. You should be careful any park that you go to, but this park is something special. And we'll learn more about it this year, along with other places, but I just want to kind of focus on my neck of the woods for a little bit too. But I'll always share as many encounters everywhere I can, anytime I can, with you guys, because you guys are the best. And I want to thank you all very much. I know this is kind of off from my normal upload, very kind of not professional, just thrown together kind of. And that's what it was, because I just wanted to just sit here and kind of talk, ramble, and share some experiences with you guys, almost like we were at a campfire with a laptop and I could show you pictures. So anyway, with that, may the Great Spirit watch over us all, and may He guide us down that path that we call life. Till later on tonight, my friends. Don't forget, tomorrow's upload, I'm going back up to Brant Lake to look around for some evidence for Tom Mezek.